What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to Mets Postgame Show right here on Talkin Mets and Rob. Hopefully, everybody is doing good. Unfortunately, Chris isn't with me in the postgame. He is dealing with his New York Knicks that are down by 15 going to the second half. Welcome to another postgame show. Hopefully, everybody is enjoying their Sunday. Mets salvage the series in Miami. Added insurance runs in the ninth inning. A big home run from Brandon Nimmo to give that extra insurance runs that were needed, even though it wasn't necessary because Reed Garrett showed up once again for the New York Mets in the bullpen and two innings of really good pitching in the last 2 innings, and the Mets get the victory. Now they head on to Cleveland. Sorry, guys. All right. Sorry, guys. For some reason. All right. There we go. Make sure you guys can hear me. All right. We're good. Hopefully, everybody's doing good once again. Sorry about that. Siri decided to answer her own name, I guess. I said her name. All right, guys. So sorry about that. So Mets get the victory after a disgusting, despicable, worst loss of the season yesterday. They turned it around with a good game. Wasn't great, but it was good. It was fishy all the way up until the ninth inning, just holding on to a 1-run lead. But Sean Manaea was fine. 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Player of the game is Brandon Nimmo. Who else would it be? Brandon Nimmo, outstanding game today. Even though he was 1 for 4, it was a huge home run. And it was an important home run. It gave us a little bit of breathing room, which was very important. Again, Harrison Bader, once again, 2 for 4, a couple of RBIs. Tyrone Taylor, 2 for 5, a run, 2 RBIs. Brett Beatty with a big RBI as well. You got Pete Alonso, 1 for 5, didn't look great today. Francisco Lindor, 2 for 4, 2 runs. The lineup, the changes in the lineup, at least 1 to 3, has really benefited almost everybody, right? Lindor had a rough go of it yesterday, but Alonso and Nimmo were good. And then today, it was Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo who were good. And Brandon Nimmo, who leads the Mets in RBIs, is the reason why he's in the 3-hole. He's not a leadoff hitter anymore. Not the way he is an offensive player anymore. He's more of that 3-hole guy, and it's good. And B. Stearns, absolutely, man. It was absolutely scary. I thought the Mets, I was going to say I thought they were going to blow up, but I was a little worried that, because, it wasn't going to be Diaz in the ninth. Were they going to go the Ottavino? Were they going to stick with Reed Garrett? The only thing is now, pretty good chance that Reed Garrett's not available tomorrow. I know you have to worry about today and win today's game, and you worry about tomorrow. But, Ottavino still scares a lot of people, and I understand that. Reed Garrett has been extremely good for the Mets, but his last couple of outings been a little shaky. So you worry about that a little bit. But at the very least, guess what? They got the win. They found a way to win. And that was the most important thing, right? After the first inning, they scored the 4 runs. It was nothing. And that's been the company line for the New York Mets. If they get a couple of runs early, they don't score throughout the game. Yesterday they did it. Today they went back to their old ways where they score a couple of runs early, and then the rest of the game, the offense is lost. And that can't happen because you saw how slowly but surely the Marlins started to creep back into the ball game. They scored 2 runs in the second, then they got that 1 run in the 7th, and then it was a close game, and then the Mets got a couple of insurance runs in the 9th, and then we called it a night and got the W. But you got to worry. You got to pay attention. They got to do a better job of adding on runs like they did yesterday. Unfortunately, the pitching didn't help the situation, but they consistently added on runs and got insurance runs throughout the game yesterday. That's what I want to see. I'm not saying score 9 runs every game, but you know what? When you score early, get a run or 2 here or there throughout the rest of the game. So it gives your pitchers room for error. I think that's the important thing that people are not really talking about enough. The Mets offense gives the pitching no room for error. And I think that's important, especially with Diaz being a big question mark. The bullpen has been good despite Edwin Diaz, but you still got to give even your starting pitching, right? Sean Manaea right? He pitched okay today. It wasn't nothing special, but he did his job, right? He gave up the 2 runs, fine. Couple of hits, fine. But you gave up the 2 runs, and now you're like, oh God, here we go. Everything had to be perfect. The one walk in the inning, and you're like, all right, here the tying run's coming to the plate, and you got to give them a little bit of time to breathe a little bit. And I think the Mets offense have not give their pitchers in almost a lot. You could say most of the games this year enough room to breathe, where the pitchers felt like they have to be perfect to either maintain a 1-run lead or a 1-run deficit. It feel like there was a lot of that lately, and I think that's the important thing to realize. Once again, guys, don't forget to please hit on that like button, guys. We'll be with you for about a half hour, 40 minutes or so. Easy said Alonso really needs to pick it up. He is so frustrated. Easy, I agree. And it looked like he was breaking out of it about 3 or 4 games ago. And this is the problem. The Mets averages as a team is just terrible. But the main guys, their averages are absolutely atrocious. If they don't hit home runs, they do not do nothing else. And Alonso's part of that problem. And, Alonso, I believe he left 4 men on base today. It's becoming an issue because even yesterday in extra innings, you have the ghost runner. You're supposed to be the face of the franchise, the best player on the team, and you hit a slowly ground ball. Yeah, you move the runner over, but you know what? Drive the ball. Get that RBI in. Don't leave it to anybody else. I see that way too much. And you know what? If you want to be paid like one of the best players in baseball and paid like a franchise player, you got to do that more often than not. And I feel like it's I've said this many times. Met fans love to get on Francisco Lindor for padding his stats. Pete Alonso does the same thing, guys. I don't care if anybody doesn't like that or not, and you want to call me out on that, that's fine. But look at his numbers when the Mets are, if you can, like last year, right? In August and September, that was the best months of Pete Alonso. And guess what? The Mets were irrelevant at that moment. And everybody got on Lindor like he padded his stats, like Pete Alonso doesn't do the same thing. I understand fans are going to be more of a stay away type of criticism for the most part for Pete Alonso, and the media does the same thing. But keep the same energy because it's very similar with Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso. The only difference with Francisco Lindor is that you don't question his defense. I think Pete Alonso takes his offense to the field, and I think it affects him. He can't throw the ball to a base. He can't flip it to first. He can't throw it to second. He can't throw it home. He has a hard time throwing the ball to bases. That scares me. That's another thing that's worrisome, is that he takes his at-bats onto the field. Francisco Lindor does not do that. Like, he'll have a rare bad defensive game, but it's rare. You can count on Francisco Lindor being almost A+ every single game. And people take that for granted all the time because as soon as Lindor makes an error, oh, look at the $340 million man making an error. Like, you got to keep the same energy. And I've killed Francisco Lindor, and it's already way past April, so there's no more excuses for Francisco Lindor either. He's got to be better, and hoping that the leadoff spot gets him going a little bit because he's been putting a lot. Even though he was 1 for 5 yesterday, he had a little bit longer at bats. He had a 7 and 8 pitch at bat, which is important. Obviously, as a leadoff hitter, get to have your lineup see more pitches against the pitcher. That's important. So you're hoping Lindor gets going. Pete Alonso in the 2-hole needs to get going. Now, let's not talk about protection for Pete Alonso. Brandon Nimmo has the most RBIs on the team. He's been the most clutch hitter on the team in 2024. No more excuses for Pete Alonso. He's had JD Martinez behind him, and now he has Brandon Nimmo behind him. That's it. Very simple. There's no more excuses. Pete Alonso has the highest RBI guy on the Mets behind him, and JD Martinez has been the best hitter on this team ever since he's joined the club from the minors. So no more excuses for Pete Alonso. You have the protection. You can't go 1 for 5 with 1 strikeout. I'm sorry. You left 4 men on base. Yesterday, a lowly ground ball in the 10th inning when you need to drive that ball. You have to be the guy to drive that run in. Don't leave it for anybody else. because you turn down a contract, which in my opinion is more player friendly than team friendly, because that's an offer that you make in the offseason, not as an extension. That's a very solid offer by the Mets, and you declined it, meaning that you probably want $200 million. You aren't getting that from the Mets or anybody else if you can't do that job. And I'm sick and tired of everybody getting on players that, yes, they deserve the criticism, but keep the same energy for players, even if they're homegrown, because it's not fair for Francisco Lindor to get the main criticism when Pete Alonso has been doing the exact same thing as Francisco Lindor and padding his stats when the pressure is not on. The fact is, the Mets got the win today. How they got it? Well, Brandon Nimmo had a hell of a job today, getting them 2 extra insurance runs ready. I think it was important because that 1-run lead going into the bottom of the ninth scared the hell out of me, even though Reed Garrett pitched well. Right? Good signs. Tyrod Taylor, once again. Harrison Bader, once again. Right? Brandon Nimmo, obviously, we just talked about. Francisco Lindor went 2 for 4, couple of runs. He's been getting on base, which, again, Francisco Lindor, if he having him a leadoff hitter now, he can hit his home runs. That's fine, but I'm not looking for him to get on hit home runs. Now, it's nice if he does, but Lindor has to be more of an on-base guy and an average guy now. That's what I want to see from Francisco Lindor. Especially early on in the game. I want to see you get on base because you got Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, 2 guys that are supposed to be big RBI guys that are on this 2024 team right now. Lindor's got to show me his on-base has been pretty good, and he also has to make sure that he's on base for Brandon Nimmo as much as possible, because Nimmo has been killing it with runners on base and runners in scoring position. That's what you have to do now. Again, Sean Manaea pitched fine tonight. That is perfectly okay. And, I wasn't expecting much more than that, to be honest with you. But look, he gave up 2 runs in 5 innings, right? Nowadays, that's a quality start. I don't agree that it's a quality start, but in baseball terms, it's a quality start. He gave his team a chance to win. He kept the lead when he got out of the game. The Mets bullpen, I'll roll it up right now. I believe it was Sean Reed Fuller who came out after Sean Manaea. I believe it was him. If I'm not mistaken, let me just pull up game day really quick. I just want to make sure with the bullpen and look at the stats here. Yeah, so with Sean Reed Fuller, inning, 1 hit, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, very good. Diekman, an inning, a hit, 1 hit, 1 run, a strikeout, and that was a home run ball. All right, fine. There was nobody on base, solo home run. Wasn't even though it got it to a 1-run lead, it was still, he still kept the lead. And then Reed Garrett, 2 innings, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts, an 0.72. I mean, just look at the ERAs of these guys. Look, even Sean Manaea has a 3.11 ERA, right? Look, Shohei Foley, 1.54. Diekman, 3.45. That's pretty good considering that he was basically the second lefty in the bullpen prior to really going down. And Reed Garrett, 0.72 ERA. He's been outstanding. So the most important thing here is that the pitching, for the most part, all year has been really good. I said this before the season started. If you have a couple of starting pitchers that have an under 4 ERA in your rotation, you're going to have a chance to win ball games. And with the Mets being 21 and 25, 4 games under 500, they had a hell of a lot more games other than the games they won where they had really good starting pitching, or even bullpen where they had chances to win, but the offense was a no-show. And that has been more often than not. Right now, the offense is the big problem with this team. And the most frustrating thing for the New York Mets is the fact that this was supposed to be the least worrisome from this team this year, right? Me, Chris, and the roundtable, we kind of ranked it from your most concerning to your least concerning. Most concerning was the starting pitching. Number 2 was the bullpen, and 3 was the least concerning, was supposed to be the offense. It's 100% flipped. The bullpen is the most trusted. The starting pitching is second most trusted, and the third, the least trusted right now is the offense. That can't be. Even if the offense becomes, a tied with a number 2 with the bullpen or with the starters, excuse me, and is a little bit more trusted and played to the back of the baseball cards, guess what, guys? This team can be a lot better because it only takes a little bit more offense from this team that's been scoring 3.5 runs per ball game, which you're not gonna win a lot of ball games scoring that little per game. Get yourself to a 4.5 runs per game type of offense, and you're gonna win more of those games. Because if you look back last year, when the Mets were scoring 4.5 runs per ball game, now the pitching blew a lot of those games last year, which was frustrating, but the offense kept their team in games last year. It was the pitching that was the problem. And that's where we are right now when it comes to that. So you got to make sure that the starting pitching gets a little bit of support here and the bullpen gets some support from that offense, because a lot of these guys are not playing from the back of their baseball card. And if they do that, that means a Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo. Nimmo has been perfectly fine. But, the other three guys play to the back of your baseball card, and this offense is going to get going and is going to score at least 4.5 runs per ball game. And now that gives your pitching a little bit more run support. And I think that's where we're going to get the wins, because we got a rough stretch coming up, guys. Like, we got the Cleveland Guardians, who are leading their division. As I see, I got the standings right here. We got the Cleveland Guardians leading the division right now, right? We played 3 in Cleveland. We come from a 10-game homestand against the Giants, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks, excuse me. So we got 3 against the Giants, 3 against the Dodgers, and 4 against Arizona. All at home. This is the 10-game homestand is where you need to step up. You can't be 500 at home. During this stretch, you need to be at least 6-4 during these games at home. One of the longest homestands of the year up until this point. You got to go at least 6-4. You can't have a 500 homestand. You can go 500 on the road, because that's what good teams do. You play 500 on the road and you play above 500 at home. We know the Mets offense has struggled at Citi Field. This is the time to get going. That goes for Alonso. That goes for Lindor. That goes for Jeff McNeil. Get going. Score 4.5 runs per game at home. And guess what, guys? You'll make a difference. As good as this pitching has been, you should be winning more ball games. I already said this, and Chris agreed with me. Mets should have at least 24 to 25 wins, if not more, just based on the starting pitching and the bullpen, keeping them in ball games and providing leads. And there was no run support at all. And you gave the pitchers no margin for error. The majority of these games, 46 games into the season, would I be wrong to say that about 38 of them, the pitchers had no margin for error, either a 1-run lead or a 1-run deficit, or maybe 2-run lead, 2-run deficit, not a big cushion here, except maybe 1 or 2 of those games like yesterday. Other than that, there's been no margin for error from this pitching staff, bullpen or starting pitching. That needs to change, because the starting pitching has been way too better than expected, probably from 100% of Met fans. We were not expecting that. Also, the bullpen, which I said I was never worried about the bullpen, because David Stern is a master of putting together bullpens, regardless of how much money he might have to spend on it. He knows guys. He picked a lot of these guys that didn't have good years last year, who were a well above 4 ERA, and they're pitching extremely well and well beyond what they did last year. He just has a knack for getting bullpens. He's very similar to Brian Cashman. Now, no matter what they do, they find a way to put together a good bullpen with names you might have heard of and names you might have not heard of, right? Reed Garrett was almost out of the league. That's how bad Reed Garrett was, right? It's something about this pitching lab and what they're doing with certain pitches, like certain guys like Reed Garrett, who developed a new pitch that made all the difference in the world, right? There's other guys that are not throwing more of their better pitches, like fastball sliders than throwing 3 pitches of fastball, slider, curveball, and they're mixing it up more. But the fastball and slider are the 2 best pitches. They're throwing that more. Little things like that can change everything for a bullpen arm. And David Stearns is just a master of it. I don't know what it is. Him and Brian Cashman. If you look back over the last, I would say 5 years, I would say 6 years. David Stearns and Brian Cashman, they've been top 3, worst top 5 in baseball in bullpen ERA. That's not a coincidence doing that many times over the course of a tenure, especially over the last 5 years, 6 years. That's why I never worried about the bullpen with David Stearns, because he knows how to do it. Same thing where you have to trust try to trust the core of this team, but they have to do it, guys. And that's the important thing, right? The offense better get going. Tommy Doyle, the Mets are done. No, they're not. You know what? Regardless of their record, have you seen the rest of the National League? Like, they're not that much better than the Mets, if not the same. Again, look, I don't want to bring it up, but you know what? Chris brought it up in, the pregame yesterday. If it's silly to talk about, but we are 46 games into the season. We are in the second quarter of 4 quarters of the season, and this 45 game stretch that we just started today, the first game of 45, is going to take you right to the trade deadline. These next 45 games are the most important for the New York Mets in 2024. Nobody cares about the rest of the 90 games that are left after the trade deadline, because it could be irrelevant for the New York Mets. Right now, the Mets are 4 games under 500, correct? Right? 21 and 25. The Mets are a game and a half out of a wild card spot. You know why? Because the third wild card team, the San Diego Padres, are 23 and 24. That means teams that are under the San Diego Padres are 3 games under 500, 4 games under 500, 4 games under 500. They're tied for second behind the third wild card. So it takes a good week, and the Mets are playing the Giants and they're playing the Diamondbacks at home this coming 10-game homestand. Teams that are in front of you. That's where you gain ground. And even if that gets you back to 500 facing those teams, that's where you need to be. Because if you're 500 at the deadline, I'm guaranteeing that the Mets would be within 3 games of the third wild card spot. And by the way, they're only 3.5 games from the second wild card spot, which is the Cubs, who are 4 games over 500. So it's not that crazy. And the Knicks are coming back; they're only 8 down. Let's see. And listen, Citi Field's the house of horrors. I agree with you guys. B. Stearns, absolutely. If it wasn't for blown saves and blown leads, the Mets would be a 500 team right now. They would be the third wild card team right now. Just think of it. The Mets could be 25 and 25, or say if they were 23 and 23, right? 46 games. They would be leading the wild card right now by a half a game over the San Diego Padres. That's how bad the rest of the National League is. They're just as bad, if not worse, than the New York Mets. And the Knicks are coming back, boy. Here we go. Listen, guys, the fact of the matter is that you could say the Mets are done, but in reality, they're not, because the rest of the National League is mediocre at best. And again, all you have to look at is the Philadelphia Phillies of 2022, who was one of the worst defensive teams in baseball in 2022, had a terrible bullpen in 2022. They had one good month in September, snuck into the wild card, and went to the World Series. Last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks were dying near the trade deadline. They made a couple of small moves. They were still not playing great until the end of August. They got pretty damn hot, not great, but they were a couple of games over. They were about 5-6 games over 500 in September. They got the last wild card spot and went to the World Series. So it's not impossible, because teams like the Phillies, who had a bad bullpen and bad defense, and their starting pitching was okay, not great in 2022. Everything changed when their bullpen got a little bit better and their defense picked up. That's where we are right now. So before you say it's over, it's not. 46 games into the season, it's not. Now, the Mets do not have the luxury of worrying about games in September because a lot's going to be determined at the trade deadline if the Mets are going to be sellers. And that's why this next 45-game stretch, which started today with a W, they got 44 more games until the trade deadline. It's going to take them to about 90 games or so. These next 45 games is going to determine if the Mets are going to be sellers or buyers or sellers at the deadline. I don't think it's going to be half in, half out. They're either going to be one or the other. And if you look at David Stern's track record with the Milwaukee Brewers, if he believes that team is close enough to a playoff spot, he will do what he has to do to make them better. It might not be big moves, but it might be small little moves here. The Mets might need a starting pitcher if Kodai Senga is not where he should be once the trade deadline comes. If he does come back by then, you might look for a starting pitcher to help out the rotation. Maybe you need another lefty in the bullpen with Raley not coming back. Maybe the Mets need an extra bat, but nothing crazy like a huge bat, but maybe a solid bat that can help this lineup, right? A lot of things to look at. So once again, guys, the Mets won 7-3. They salvaged the series in Miami. They go to Cleveland for 3 before they head home after the off day. 10-game homestand. You got the Giants, you got the Dodgers, and you got the Diamondbacks. 10-game homestand, 3 against the Giants, 3 against the Dodgers, 4 against the Diamondbacks. The Giants and the Diamondbacks are in front of you by – you're tied with the Diamondbacks, and you're a half a game behind the Giants right below the third wild card spot. These are the teams you must beat because if it comes down to head-to-head matchups based on tiebreakers, and that could happen the way this National League is playing right now, you got to beat those games. You just have to. You got to win those games. Dodger series is going to be tough. But you know what? They played well against the Dodgers in LA. Do it at Citi Field. The offense needs to show up. The pitching has on the bullpen and the rotation. Offense, show up, guys. Let's go. With that said, guys, tonight, 9 p.m. tonight, you got me, you got Hector, you got Hayden, and you got Chris for Mets Roundtable, 9 p.m. tonight. Check us out. After this stream, guys, it will redirect everybody to that stream for 9 p.m. tonight. If you just wait for a second and click on that like button, when it redirects you, the more likes we get, the more people are going to be able to get that recommendation at the top of the list and see that stream for later tonight. So with that said, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. The Mets are 21-25. Won today 7-3 against the Marlins. Brandon Nimmo, player of the game. With that said, have a good night. Let's go Mets, and let's hope the Knicks come back down by 10. Have a great night, guys. I'll see you tonight, 9 p.m. Mets Roundtable. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets.